ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to show you, I have started a wrap here. Now this is my short bow, and it's actually not optimized for 28-inch arrows. It's actually optimized for much smaller, but you can see I've got a loop here. All I did was take the string, lay it along the shaft here, take the other string, lay it along, so I left out a loop, then bring it here and start to wrap around and around until I got to this. Now, as you can see, you want to leave tension on this, okay? And if you pull, you're going to ruin it. So I'm going to show you real quick while I make my dinner here how this lays up. And now once I get it in place, I'm just going to kind of tug until I feel like I've got the length I want, like this for my handle. And from here, just because I've done this a bunch of times now, and I kind of have an idea what I want, I know that I want my handle about a certain length, and there's no point me making it a whole bunch longer than that. So I'm going to go up to here, and I also don't want it to be especially short. So if I do it there, it's going to be a little too short. I need to leave myself enough room to grab it. So that's part of it. So now that we've got that, we've got our length set. I'm just going to run it around, but you'll notice I'm placing my finger on the side of it here. That's to hold the tension. So this is what's called a tension wrap. Now, I'm not putting a lot of tension on it, but I am holding it under tension. I don't want to let that go because I want my wrap to be as tight as possible and hold position as tight as possible. And you might wonder why that is when we're going to slide it up and down as we do this process to lock in our position, right? Okay, so at the end of this, you can see this end is still very much loose. Well, that's not good. So we're going to take this end and stuff it up through there. But first, we're going to take this end. Now that I have a rough idea of where I want my handle to be, you might think, no, just watch. I've done these so many times, and usually when you do it just right, even though it doesn't look like it's gonna, it works out generally perfect. So I'm looking at just about the right length for this. So now I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to pull this back and tuck it through so that I have this. And then I'm going to tug on this end while holding this end and pull that tight through. And what you'll find is that you can pull it right back through and cinch this down. So when you look at it from this side, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's getting cinched up inside here, and it's locked in. Now I'm going to take the other one and bring it up alongside, and just for temporary, I'm just going to try and stick those two together and get them fairly snug. I might, in some cases, do a quick melt, or you just bring them closer together and snug them tighter and tighter until you get enough room to tie off. Now you're going to want to use the longer one, not the shorter one, to tie off, and sometimes it helps to flip it around. So this is just to be temporary, guys. This isn't permanent. We're not locking this in, but this is going to be too small for the handle. All I'm going to use this for is to identify its location and give me something to hold it with while I do my practice. So not only have I given myself a handle, it actually is comfortable, but you can see it doesn't fit my entire hand. It just wraps around, but I actually kind of like that, and it gives me a knot on the inside where I can grab an index and run it around to my palm, or I actually prefer to have it here on the side as a grip. And this has really nice poundage, guys. This will be right around 60 pounds at 28 inches, 58 pounds. But I'm not going to be doing that. In fact, the arrows I'm going to be firing it are going to be right around 21 to 25 inches. That's going to be about the max, maybe 26 inches. Anything bigger than that, I switch over to one of the other bows. So this is my short bow. As I've said, it's still in progress. It is strong enough now, though. I'm just going to switch you around here so that you guys can get a view of what's going on. So let me just slide you into the mount. Hopefully that will go smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't. And you'll be able to, once I remove this, see the target. And that is, of course, one of the other bows. Now, there's nothing wrong with that bow, but it's a little different than this one. In fact, that one's all right. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It works awesome. I'm just in the middle of stretching in the material and breaking it in. And it's had its sessions, though, where it's been fired and fired and fired, and now I've just kind of let it sit. So now I'm just going to kind of move the handle to where I think it should be. In fact, I pretty much had it just about right from the look of it. I've got these really short 21-inch arrows, but at the draw poundage of this bow, even with a little 21er, this will do just fine. It gets enough get up and go to get it across the room. But the other bows that are here, really, except for the war bows, they're the only ones that can fire these. And to be honest, they don't do it very accurately. So I decided I would just kind of mess around and see how accurate this one would be. And while it's not incredibly accurate, I don't have it dialed in yet. So let's just take a look. Oh yeah, I had it sitting a little too low. That looks about right. So I find generally when I find it's a little too low, I go a little higher and it's perfect. I find it's a little too high, I go a little lower and it's perfect. It just depends. Try both. Experiment. Of course, that's not really me aiming. I just kind of had one tucked under my armpit. I tried to fire that way. It didn't work out. All right, so I'm going to take a few more shots. And basically, this is the same, long, boring kind of process where I dial in the particular implement that I'm using. Now, that means I got to index the handle, and it's got to be perfect. Okay, that actually came out very close. Very close. And I think it was just a tiny bit too high there. But this is successful as far as the wrap goes. And that's the real trick, guys. You're going to have to test fire it. And your wrap should be tight enough to actually allow you to test fire it and not move. And if you can't test fire it at least a couple of times and not have it move, then it's a failure. And it's just a matter of getting it tight enough. And as you can see, this method works really good. It's locked in really nice. And I'm able to just kind of shoot with it until I need to stop. And it's kind of nice. So I'm just going to keep shooting here and trying to experiment and see where the perfect height is. And then once I have the perfect height, I'll use this as the top of the rest of the grip and then wrap it again. Oh, that was good. Came off just a tiny touch to the right. And given we don't have fletchings, it's one of the reasons why I like to use a bare shaft. So if I have fletchings and it comes off to the right or to the left, well, it could be the fletchings, right? It could be a lot of things. But if I know that my form is good and there are no fletchings and I don't have a significant tip on it and it's just balanced enough that it'll fly, and I see that I'm consistently high or low or right or left, any of those are indicators that you don't have this lined up correctly yet. So I'm still doing the exact same thing. I fired a few shots. They came out a little off, so I'm just going to modify it. I'm not changing anything else, just the handle. Nothing else is done. It's the first and only thing I do with bare shafts only until it's perfect. And that time it came out way low, not high, way low. So I'm just going to move it back up a tiny little smidge and see what happens. Because really, that should mean theoretically that my grip was too low. That was a little closer. A little closer. So let me just try some here. I've noticed some bows really do prefer to be drawed one way or the other because they don't exactly draw equally. So if you're having trouble getting a bow of this material to kind of shoot correctly, oh yeah, that's better. From one direction, flip it around. and see if it shoots better the other way, because generally a bow will actually have one slightly stiffer and one softer limb, and what you want is the stiffer limb on the bottom. So what I've done by test shooting is identify that the top is in fact the softer limb, which makes sense really. When you look at the way that it's bowed, it does seem to be that it's a pretty shallow brace height, as you can see, and it is. I'll show you after. But in the end, this is going to be my new bow. Now, it's at a poundage where it's not really a light war bow. It's just a good short bow. Well, I guess that means I got it pretty much right. My aim looked true. My form was good. I felt like it was a good shot, and I smoked the target dead center, which was technically exactly where I aimed for. So as long as that's happening, and I mean, if you look what I'm using, this is one of my tent pole arrows I made early on. It doesn't even have a tip on it, and they do fly better with a tip. So I'm going to put this one away into the quiver, which is kind of cool because I do have a quiver for these short arrows. I showed early on that I was working on a quiver. This is complete, but it's not the prettiest prototype, but it does work. And it holds the arrows, and it holds as many of them as I'm likely to need. So this one does have a little weight in the tip, and I'm just going to see here. Oh, that was better. The first shot there didn't seem very accurate. It kicked the tail way over. But really on this, there's really not much reason for it. And you can see right away if your tiller is off. In fact, it was. And if you look carefully, you see your knot is to one side or the other. You really want to rectify that. And believe it or not, while it's under pressure, it's often hard to do. What you're going to want to do is step into it, bow it just a little, and now look at that. How much easier was that to adjust, right? So let that be a lesson to you. If you're going to set up your tiller, take tension off the bow until you can get your tiller to set up right. That looks better. So now I'm just looking at my other end. I'm seeing it's not perfectly straight either. Well, no wonder it was a little wonky. You got to kind of check this stuff, right? And make it just kind of straight enough that it's pretty darn close. And if you can do that, generally you'll be more accurate. All right, so there you go. That looks better on the tiller front. I'm going to remember which side is my softer side and keep that as my top limb. Just remember your softer limb should be the top limb, and you can make it a little longer or shorter, and it'll balance out. In fact, it's better if you make it shorter. Well, that wasn't too bad, but we're not in the ideal spot yet. I did notice that it didn't seem to be in the perfect position. And because I did flip it upside down, it was offset, right? So we're going to fix that right quick here. And then I'm going to end this video. I just wanted to show you guys. Whoa. This actually is firing these things with some decent power, which, yeah, I guess I was a little too low there. Which the other was really weren't able to do. None of them, except for the war bows. This one is like a war bow that doesn't hurt to shoot. I'll put it that way. I mean, it's designed to fire the same kind of arrows. So now that I've hit with that arrow, I didn't like it. It didn't shoot very well. I'm putting it in the back. And the reason I am is I'm not putting it in the same section with the arrows that shoot well, guys. I separate out these arrows. That wasn't so great. It wasn't so bad. It was actually pretty close on target. Had it been standing up, it would have hit it. It was that kind of close. So that wasn't so bad. And considering we really don't have the handle perfectly locked in yet, I'm just going to keep moving it incrementally. Tiny, tiny little bits matter, guys. Oh, look at that. So now I know I've got my spot for my handle locked in. And I know that arrow was one of my good ones because it shot well. So we're going to take a look at a couple of things. You'll notice we got the weight belt out. We're going to take this guy. I'm going to show you its brace height real quick. Here, let me just see if we can get you a little better view for what I'm doing. And then we're going to show you, we got just under 21. We're actually just over 21. No, we're at, like I said, just under 21. A little over 20.5. That's not bad. Now, we're going to take that, but that's a very short arrow, guys. And when you measure this height, you're supposed to measure halfway through your handle. to here. And look at that. We're just under 5.5-inch brace height, 5 and a bit. We've got a nice long tail here. This is actually just for, because I wasn't sure how long the string was going to end up being. Once they break in, you usually have to adjust them, and I'll fine tune it then. But right now, it seems like this material really likes having this brace height, and it's very strong. So on that note, we're going to do a quick test here. I'm just going to count out the weights. Now, technically, we got 20, 5, 8, 30, 33, 37, 39, 40, 41, and then here we're going to put on 42 and 43, because that just happens to be what I have here right now. And we're going to see what that does to this bow's draw length, and you'll see why I'm not using really long arrows on it. But this one's almost done, and I really like this bow. It's actually going to look like it's going to be my favorite short bow for sure. But I really do like them strong. I want to be able to fire really heavy warbow-like arrows that are short but brutal kind of stuff and still have it function. So we're going to take this guy. And here we go. Oh, I can already feel it. Oh man, I almost got the exact perfect amount of tape out to start with. So this bow isn't really that strong, guys. I mean, we're looking at 43 pounds, and it was just over 27 inches. So 43 pounds at 27 inches sounds like it's a lot, but I showed in the last video, I might not actually upload it, it was kind of long and boring, but it showed me testing this one a couple of times with different weights, and it was pretty good. I mean, at 30 pounds or 35 pounds, it's 25. So that's pretty good. And basically, from what I saw, when you're firing those 21 inches, it was 30, right at 21, which was kind of awesome. And it stacks slower than I thought. It does stack pretty good when you first start out, which is why I like it. But as you go back, it's actually not building as hard as you might think. In the end, it's definitely a 50-pound bow. If you're going to go 28 inches, that was 48 pounds. So my arrows are not rated for that. My 28-inch arrows, we didn't even get to their draw length quite yet. And it's already 8 pounds over their rated, which is about the same as this guy, which is one of the things that sought me to build a new one in the first place. Was I wanted something that would fire shorter arrows, guys. This is not engineered. This is engineered to fire 28-inch arrows with 48 pounds, but it's not engineered to fire short arrows. This one technically will fire those, but it doesn't hit targets well with them. This will actually smoke targets with them and be accurate and treat them like a regular arrow, even though they're ridiculous weight. These are 48 grams. And short. So you don't get much of a pull. But that's the beauty of a war bow. You need a very short pull to get good power. And that's where this one excels. A really stiff material. It's got a really nice amount of tension on it, and the brace height is really good. I could stretch it out a little more and make it a bigger brace height, but for the shorter arrows, you really don't want that. You want a shallowest brace height as you could get away with. And there's no slapping at this brace height with this material, which is really, really nice and a really good sign that it kind of likes that range. And it's quite happy to be in that range. But this is nearly 1-inch thick material here, guys. Like, there's my fingers as a reference to 1 inch, believe it or not, is right there. And this is, it looks like 1 inch when you first look at it, but it's really just over a ½ inch. It's like 6/8 or 5/8 technically of an inch, but it's awesome. I love this stuff. This stuff is so nice. It's a little thicker than what I used for the other bow, which is why they're significantly different. That one will fire the 28-inch arrows. This one I can't. If I did it with this one, it absolutely would shatter them, even though they draw the exact same poundage at 28 inches. And you might wonder why. That one's also at 48 pounds at 28 inch. But it kicks softer. The string is under less tension. It has a higher brace height. So when you first go to draw on it, it's actually a lot gentler a draw, and I can get nice shallow draws on it. Whereas this one's really not. When you see the draw test,
30 pounds barely moves it. You're at 30 pounds by the time you get to here. And by the time you get even just a little farther, you're at nice poundage. Now, if I wanted a full 32-inch draw, which I can do on this bow, I'm at more like 55 pounds or 50 pounds. But you might think, but we're already under 28 inch, well under 28 inches, and we're at 48 pounds. By the time I get to 28 inches, we're right at 50 plus pounds, 51 maybe. And then by the time I get to the 30 inches, we're at 60. And by the time I get to the 32, we're more closer to 70. And that's probably pretty accurate. I'm actually guessing it'll probably top out right around 65. That's this one. Now, the other one, believe it or not, tops out right around 60 pounds. They don't come out very much different, but this one's shorter, made of a much stiffer material with a much shallower brace height. And that all adds together to mean I can take that short arrow and put a lot more power into it than I could with that one. Also, the thicker limbs build more draw power. You have to work harder to pull those limbs. But the smaller limbs actually snap back really fast and work well. So for me, for most people, I would recommend the medium ones, not so much these war bows. I have built three now war bows, and I guess I do technically classify this one as a light war bow just because it is in the way that it functions. And to me, that's really the mark is the brace height, the tension. Can you fire short arrows on it? And is that its preference? If it's built to fire short arrows and that's all it wants to do, which you'll see in this bow, I could fire 28-inch arrows, but they better be 55, 60-pound rated at least. And if they're not, I'm going to be ripping them apart just like I did the 28-inch arrows with a 48-pound bow. And that is the problem with the other bow. I was firing the wrong arrows. But I have another quiver. I have a whole nother setup for this particular bow. And I've been wanting a short bow that would work well for a while. The other two war bows are great. I made a quiver for the shorter arrows. I made a whole bunch of short arrows. But then when I did, I realized I didn't like shooting either one of those. I mean, the lighter of the two has a 150-pound draw, so that ain't good. It's enough to hurt my shoulder and stuff. Whereas this one's not. This one's rated a nice poundage. I find 80 pounds or so is perfect at the back end. And if I draw too much more than that, it starts to get uncomfortable after a while. And if you're going to draw more than that regularly, you really need to work up to that. So, I mean, like I draw 80 pounds comfortable. A lot of people are really struggling at 80 pounds. And for them, drawing 80 pounds is like, hey, I'm a tough guy. For me, drawing 80 pounds is like, hey, what's up? I just came down from 110. And the week before, I'm like, hey, yeah, what's up? I'm shooting 80. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, what'd you shoot before that? I'm like 150. And the guy's like, oh. And suddenly they shut up and go away. And then when they look at the size of me, they know I'm not kidding. And I have bows here that shoot close to 200-pound draw weight. And all I can manage is a really short draw for a really short, stout kind of arrow. But even then, I found it wasn't that accurate. It's hard for me to be accurate. I'm not training well enough or hard enough to really pull that hard enough. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. My dinner, she be a cooking. I'm almost done, and this bow is also almost done. It's going to be great. All I need to do is add more wrap to the handle, believe it or not. Now that I've locked it in, I'll fire some more shots to make sure, dab some CA to lock it in place, then do a whole nother wrap around it. I like to have two of these types of features, one on either side, so that when I grab it from here, it indexes both parts of my hand, one inside and one where my knuckles sit, and it works really well. So that's what I'm going to do, but that takes another separate wrap outside of that one, but that'll thicken up the handle and bulk it up real nice. Then I'll put some leather on it. It'll come out great, guys. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Keith out.